to the Challenge to Change podcast. My name is Hazel, and this podcast is all about the little changes we can all make that will have a positive effect upon planet Earth. If you're new here, welcome. If you've listened before, welcome back. The Challenge to Change podcast has been brought to you on behalf of ANSA Environmental Services. To find out more about ANSA, please visit ANSA, which is ansa.co.uk. Let's get into the podcast episode. Welcome to this episode of the Challenge to Change podcast. This episode was inspired by another podcast, which I found entirely by accident. And the podcast in question is called The Fifth Siren, a 5-part podcast about Venice. So in Venice, 4 sirens are sounded to warn the population of incoming danger. Each siren represents a growing level of emergency regarding the level of the rising seawater. If you're interested in listening to that podcast, head to Spotify and search for The Fifth Siren, or simply Google The Fifth Siren. So, I hear you wonder, what do sirens in Venice have to do with Cheshire East, or even the UK? Well, this connection will become clear as the podcast progresses. But before we find out more, I find myself pondering this question. Do we live in harmony with nature, or are we disconnected? Think about your daily life. Do you wake up with the sun rising, or through the harsh sounds of an alarm clock? Are you in touch with the changing of the seasons, or is your schedule dictated by screens and deadlines? I guess for many of us, it's the alarm clock. Though perhaps we do notice the light changing in the room, depending on our wake-up time. Certainly, many of us are organised by screens and deadlines, and perhaps we are not so connected with the changing of the seasons these days. It certainly seems that, in many ways, modern life has separated us from Earth's natural cycles. But is this disconnection inevitable, or can we realign with the planet and live in a way that supports both nature and ourselves? Moreover, is a connection to planet Earth actually vital to ensure that we as individuals go further to protect it? Let's take a step back and look how human life has evolved. Our ancestors lived by the cycles of the sun and moon, planting crops with the seasons, moving with the rhythms of nature. Today, our lives are, in many cases, dictated by technology. Bright screens may disrupt our sleep. We may often find ourselves eating food that has been shipped to us from thousands of miles away, although perhaps many of us are considering food miles when making food purchases. It is perhaps fair to say that we are somewhat disconnected from planet Earth. Indeed, if you listen to the Fifth Siren podcast, you may wonder in amazement at the steps the people of Venice take to block out the rising tides in order to prevent the seas and canals from affecting their homes and workplaces. That being said, I suppose if your home or place of work is literally sitting within a body of water, it is perhaps much easier to see our connection to planet Earth. Indeed, for the people of Venice, to disregard nature would be unsafe. As the Fifth Siren notes, the rising tides and weather anomalies are becoming more frequent in the North Adriatic Sea. Here in Cheshire East, we might not see that sharp end of climate change in the same way as other parts of the world. So perhaps then it's easier to disconnect from planet Earth. Moving back to the question I asked at the beginning of this podcast episode, What does the rising tides of Venice have to do with Cheshire East? And the short answer is everything. We are all connected. And the activities that take place in one location does have an impact on other locations. When we appreciate nature and the majesty of planet Earth, whether it's through experiencing its beauty, understanding ecosystems, or recognizing its role in sustaining life, we develop a deeper emotional and intellectual connection to nature and the earth. This, in turn, fosters a sense of value and care for the natural world. With this awareness comes the realization that human actions significantly impact upon the environment, often in harmful ways. Understanding the consequences of deforestation, pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss makes it clear that preservation and restoration are not just optional, but absolutely necessary. As already noted, some communities will find themselves entirely unable to ignore the consequences because they are living and breathing them, as indicated by the Fifth Siren podcast. Of course, human beings are capable of destruction, but they are also capable of conservation. Indeed, human beings have an ethical obligation to protect nature. When we recognize this responsibility, this transforms passive admiration of planet Earth into active stewardship by engaging in conservation efforts and sustainable practices. In other words, appreciating planet Earth and enjoying a connection to it cultivates responsibility, and that responsibility ensures that what is appreciated is also preserved. So let's challenge ourselves to change today and keep on changing for the active protection of planet Earth. I really hope that you will take the time to like, subscribe, and share. Bye for now.